I think we'll start the introductions. So I want to say welcome, and I'm really delighted to have, hope I get the name correct, and please correct me when I get it wrong. Dr. Mogege, Mosimege. Close, not quite.
Very
close. From the University of the Free State in South Africa. He's a professor of mathematics education and the EDTP SETA Research Chair in Mathematics Education. He served as the head of School of Mathematics and Natural Sciences and Technology Education in the Faculty of Education from 2019 to 2022. He has also worked as a Chief Research Specialist and Director of Human Sciences Research Council and University Registrar at the University of South Africa. He holds an MA in Mathematics Education from Eastern Illinois University, an MSc in Science Education from Wits University, and a PhD in Mathematics Education from the University of the Western Cape. His research interests are ethnomathematics, mathematical modeling, assessment in mathematics, and indigenous knowledge systems. I am really excited to welcome you to San Diego State University and to the Center for Research in Math and Science Education. We were connected through a mutual connection through Mosimege. And so it's really a pleasure that we were able to bring you here today. And I'm especially excited that Amtrak managed to find a way to get you from Los Angeles to here, despite the track closure in San Clemente, which has made life very difficult for everybody. So we are so grateful that you're able to be here. And as a normal reminder of the run of events, we'll have a talk for about 45 minutes or so, and then time for question and answer and informal discussion afterwards. And then this evening at around 6 o'clock, I know some of you will be in class, but for those of you who are not in class, you're welcome to join us for dinner. We'll probably head over to somewhere like Pesto or somewhere nice and easy close by. I apologize to those of you who have class. So with that, I'll hand the floor over. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for allowing for hosting me at the center. It's the first time I met San Diego State University, San Diego. I was still in charge when I picked me up from the old town. The only time I was in the Los Angeles area was 30 years old. When I was a student at Eastern Illinois University. That's about 50 miles down south from Champaign. That's why I studied. So I've got I wouldn't tell everyone what you said to me. When I said I was a secondary student at Illinois in 1992. That's when I was a student there. And later on, I came to spend some 3 months at University of Georgia. That explains why from Yangon to Georgia, I did my postdoctoral with Jeremy Patrick at the University of Georgia in 2001. But I'm really thankful that I'm here. I'm thinking that when I contacted Judith Mosimege, and the reason why I contacted her is that 3 years ago, just before COVID started, Judith was one of the invited speakers at our Mathematics Education Conference in South Africa. And so we shared a panel together on how to decolonize aspects in mathematics education, and herself, myself, and 2 others were sharing that together. But I've known Judith over time really because I've met her at PME, I've met her at ICME, and so when I initially said, can I visit you, Judith, I said, it won't be possible. I think she's doing something additional to her teaching load. I think she's taking other responsibilities. And then she suggested that the person who would be closer to you would be Bill. I don't know how to say your name. You will not say my name. I do not say yours too.
Zanner.
Yeah. And so I then started to contact. I think at the time you were traveling. at the time when we first contacted.
Yeah.
And I was not even sure at the stage because I did not have a visa to come to the US at the time. And so I was not sure whether this would happen, but because of the COVID problem, applications for visas were running 2 years time. Also, there's a backlog. So when I got on the system to apply for a visa, the first opening was in May 2023. That's what I was told when I would go and be interviewed for the visa.
Oh my God.
But they keep on saying, keep on checking the website until you see. And see, the problem is that you usually don't attend to these things until you need to travel and you realize that you don't have a visa. You know, you sort of keep on saying, I will do it, I will do it. I mean, after the visa, you really get a 10-year visa. And so, check the system. The next appointment was used to December 2023. And I said, I want to go to the NCT and do also 1 or 2 other things like be here. And 2 weeks in August, they said, we'll find an opening in German for you to go and apply for the visa, and I'm here today. So I'm thankful. It's a bit of a miracle. And for those of you who believe in miracles, I think they still happen in this case. I'm happy to thank you again for coming. Without wasting too much time, let me go into what I thought I wanted to talk about. I have taken a keen interest in ethnomathematics as an area of focus in maths education over time. In fact, how I got into this is that, and I think 1 or 2 slides will indicate that, but just a bit of a summary on how I became interested. When I finished the master's at Eastern Illinois, and I went back home, I spent about 14 months in Charleston, Illinois. When I went back home, I was almost ready to start my PhD doctoral work. And Wits University, those of you who know Jill Adler has been working for many years at Wits University. I hear you saying Wits, actually, we pronounce it Wits University. Yeah. Because it's a shortened version for Witwatersrand University. That's a short for that. And so at the time when I came to the US, I had been already doing a Master of Science in Science Education, which included maths education as well. So when I went back home, I said to University, let me complete this. So I finished that program and then started into this program. When I started, a Professor Landon at the time had just received a research grant from the National Research Foundation in South Africa to do research into ethnomathematics. And that was around 1995-96. And so he picked up a couple of people that he knew who were studying in maths education, just to say, can we do this together? Can we explore? Because at that stage, it had not been an area of focus of research, at least in the dedicated way that it has been. So Paul invited me here to supervise me for a project in my master's degree at Wits. And so I said, let me come on board. And I took a keen interest. And so the journey began. That was in 1995-96. And ever since, I've been doing a bit of work, not all the time, as indicated. I also do research in other areas in education, but I've done most of my work in this area, and you can be able to find that. And so I decided when I was checking with him, when I was checking what I could talk about, we agreed that I would talk on this. I could have talked on other things, but I thought, let me talk on this because it's one of the areas that has received attention in many countries, especially in South Africa, but not to the extent that I would wish we could have done much work. One of the things that I think we could have done and have not done enough of is to ensure that ethnomathematical concepts are integrated in the school curriculum, in the official policy of the government. And in the early stages, when Paul Landon started, he was saying in one of the committees, and it first got into the policy and then got out, because people had not really understood what this was about. It was in the early stages, and as a result, when we look into the current, we call it curriculum and assessment policy statements for school mathematics for all the grades. There is one line reference in there that says that teachers of mathematics and other subject areas must include indigenous knowledge system concepts when they teach. That's the only line that they put in. And so when Judith Mosimege was with us at the panel, one of the questions I asked the teachers who had a conference, like the NCT last week, the other question I asked was, when you look at that policy and read that statement, what does it mean to you? What does it mean? What does it ask you to do? And when we leave it for the teachers to interpret, you know what happens. You can give it all kinds of interpretations, very many, maybe none at all, maybe as much as, depending on how much we like and how much time we have. And so it has not gone as far as possible. But if instead of that, with all that long direction, let me go into what I wanted to share with you. What I want to talk about this afternoon are a little bit of a number of people who have done work in mathematics. And amongst them, we've got Uberatan D'Ambrosio, Paulos Jed, Alan Bishop, Gloria Gelma, Arthur Powell, Claudia Zaslavsky, and because I was coming to San Diego State University in the US, I thought I must pick up a few people who have done work in mathematics in the US. These are just a few, there are many others. You know, one of them is Ron Eglash. If you can look at Ron Eglash's work, beautiful work. He has infused technology to a great, in fact, I've got a signed copy of work he has done on fractals. Ron Eglash and mathematics, a beautiful book. But actually, I could not put all of them there, but I thought I'd pick up a few people who, on the kind of that, they have done a little bit on in this area. But I also thought I'd just share a little bit on what we do in South Africa, or some of the that I have done over the years. So this is what I'll be talking about for the next 30 minutes or so. And I start with Uberatan D'Ambrosio. Now, D'Ambrosio, as most of you would know, those of you who have read this work would know, I think it's not scrolling in the way I should. Okay, I think I'm on track. For those of us who are working in mathematics, we have come to look at Uberatan D'Ambrosio. We tend to refer to him as the father of mathematics, only because he sort of coined the term in its early stages of its use, and that was around 1975, when this term was starting to come into being as an area of focus. And so, and as you may be aware, he passed away in 2021 at the age of 88 years. And now, some of the definitions that I've picked up about 2 or 3 that he has used. One of those that he uses is societies have, as a result of the interaction of the individuals, developed practices, knowledge, and in particular jargons and codes, which daily encompass the way they mathematize. That is the way they count, they measure, they relate, and classify on the way they infer. This is just one part of the definitions that D'Ambrosio has put over time. But another one that he gives, and I've got to give on 2 more that he has given. In this one, he says, we'll call ethnomathematics the mathematics which is practiced among identifiable cultural groups, such as national tribes, such as labor groups, and so on. So here he was expanding to say it does not only have to be cultural, and there's no pointer here, so I'll just indicate. It does not only have to be cultural, although it is predominantly cultural, but groups who practice mathematics in their own way and also fall into the group of the people who do mathematics. And then I move on, and this is Uberatan D'Ambrosio. Those of you who may have met him, he has been to many big conferences and PME, and in particular, ethnomathematics conferences. This is Uberatan D'Ambrosio. Now, I then move to Paulos Jed. Paulos Jed comes from Portugal, but went into Mozambique. And so he's got Portuguese origins where he was born, and then he became a citizen of Mozambique, a neighboring country of South Africa. When I did my PhD in ethnomathematics 20 years ago, one of the things I noted in my work was after D'Ambrosio, Paulos Jed was the most prolific writer at the time on ethnomathematics. Of course, many other people have come after them to do a lot of work. But when I did that in 2000, I then argued that if you look in the literature and look for material on ethnomathematics, Paulo Jett was the second most prolific writer at the time on ethnomathematics. So of course, many others have done work there. Now, a couple of things that Paul does, and I said is from Mozambique, is from Maputo, actually is from Portugal. He was born in Portugal. And in Maputo, they speak Portuguese. In Mozambique, rather, Now, he also sadly passed away in 2014 at the age of 62. He defines ethnomathematics as the field of study that tries to study mathematics or its ideas and the relationship to the whole of cultural and social life. But he also says ethnomathematical work revolves around two things. The first is math traditions that have survived colonization and math activities in people's daily lives. I tend to lean more towards the part of his definition that says traditions and math activities in people's daily lives. Because for me, it expands the scope, it broadens the scope. It does not limit it strictly to culture. It includes culture, but it also says when you go into someone's activities on a daily basis, you find contexts that are useful that you as a teacher can tap on and use institutionalize. Although there have been arguments against that, and there are critics, especially from the people who have done, like people like Mosimege, who have actually critiqued ethnomathematics approaches, and there have been others as well. All right, but that's the lead that I took. And I like the second one more. Culture elements that may serve as a starting point for doing laboratory mathematics. In other words, you look at an activity and you say, how does that help me to understand mathematical concepts? And you create the linkage. That part is also equally received criticism because people have argued, those who are not into this, have argued to say ethnomathematics should not be a starting point for any other concept. But I believe that one of the things that can link to is to link it to what is existing, what is there, and create connections. Because we do maths, addition, subtraction, equations are the same, but this is how we draw on them to teach. That allows us to be able to look at certain points and build onto that. But I go there and say we can then expand to develop and do analysis and draw many other ideas out of that. And that's Paulo's Jet. The two of them, Ugratan Ambrosio and Paulo's Jet, together at one of the IPMI conferences. Now, one of the things that Paulo's Jet has done, he has gone on to say, ethnomathematicians do 8 things in general. And if you do it in this area, you may be doing any one of the 8. He says ethnomathematicians adopt a broad concept of mathematics, including in particular counting, locating, measuring, and I think that Bishop talks about the same thing. Alan Bishop does the same. Ethnomathematicians emphasize and analyze the influences of socio-cultural factors on the teaching, learning, and development of mathematics. I fully agree with that. And I will not go through all the 8 individually to save time, but these are the first 3. These are the next 3. Maybe let's touch on the first one. Ethnomathematicians emphasize that the school mathematics of the transplanted imported curriculum is apparently alien to the cultural traditions of Africa, Asia, and South America. He specifically picked up those countries. Of course, you can argue to say that those are not the only ones that are called traditions. Now, that traditions, in fact, I would have also added there that the first ethnomaths conference took place in Spain. And if you go to Spain, you find rich material that they have used. So I would have argued and say they can go beyond those 3. But that's what he said at the time. This was way back in 1998 when he said that. But I'm saying, of course, this area has grown, and those of us working in the area have expanded and extended the things that have been defined to look at the way that we do. And that's why it continues to grow in the way it does and goes beyond what was earlier defined. All right, but these are, the last 2 are ethnomathematicians also look for other cultural elements and activities that may serve a starting point. That is part of one introducer gave earlier. So he talks about the 8 things, says ethnomathematicians, when they do work, they do any or all of these. It depends on the kind of work that you do. Okay. And now, I think this will be the work of Alan Bishop. If I can see myself, I can see them, but I think this is probably the work of Alan Bishop.
Do you want me to adjust that? Or
yeah, maybe that would help. It looks like.
Let me see if I can fix it.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I don't know for sure if this is going to work, but let's try. Is that better?
That helps.
Okay.
Good. Thank you, Bill.
Sorry.
So I go to the work of Alan Bishop, the third of the people that I picked up. I could have picked up 30, but I thought just 6 should suffice. Alan Bishop has, in the earlier definitions I referred to, the 6 things that he talks about that are in cultural groups. Counting, measuring, and all those activities that are done that are mathematical, and he talks about them here. But you see, Alan Bishop, in addition to this, he also has written a number of interesting books. Now, I can't move the slides anymore. Well, I don't know what has happened.
Oh, no.
It might have just been because you clicked off the
Oh, yeah. I clicked off the PowerPoint.
50 click once.
Okay.
See if you're back on.
Good, I am.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
I wanted to go back, but it doesn't want to go back. I'll go back manually, it's okay. Yes. Now, he has written mathematical cultivation, and that is the one of the books that he has written that's available. Then he went on to write math education and culture and explored a couple of things. And so he's written quite a bit. And of course, those of you know Alan Bishop, that's him. But also that I was with him at the in Hamburg before my head became more white. That's 6 years ago when we were at in Hamburg, and I. Chance, you said you were at Italy as well? Yes. And I'm sure some of you have been to Italy as well. And so I met with Alan Bishop. And I've appreciated the work that they have done, because for someone like me who has taken an interest in mathematics, I've drawn on the work that they have done. I've drawn on the work of Alan Bishop, extended it, critiqued it, and also added my perspectives on the work that they have done. But Alan Bishop, in my view, is one of the people, although he is not strictly regarded as an ethnomathematician, but he has done work that has contributed extensively to ethnomathematics. In the way, you will not talk about Alan Bishop in the same way we talk about Paulos Jed or Ubida Broswe and others. But when you get the work that he has done, it sets a ground for us to expand the work and be able to draw from. All right. Now, I go to Gloria Gilmer. Gloria Gilmer was born in Baltimore, Maryland, 1928. And she did her PhD in curriculum instruction. But the interesting thing is that she is the co-founder of the International Study Group on Ethnomathematics in 1985. Herself, D'Ambrosio, and Jill Cuevas and Rick Scott, the 4 of them were responsible for establishing the International Study Group on Ethnomathematics, and she became the first president. So we've got strong roots, and it's interesting that some of the work that she has done is, if you look at the second bullet, mathematical patterns in African American hairstyles, presented at the 77th annual meeting of the NCTN in 1998. I don't remember, but I may have been at that NCTN, because I met her at that stage when ethnomathematics was still at early stages. And then she also went on to do ethnomaths and African American perspective on developing women in mathematics. And it was at the NCTN in that publication. So she passed away 2 years ago, last year, at the age of 93. And I've met her once or twice. And I know that she was very passionate about ethnomathematical work, especially about the role of women in teaching mathematics. She had a passion about that, because she felt those are the things, those are the issues that are not adequately addressed, and we lose out on that. But she did some good work. And so Gloria Gilmer contributed extensively to the work in ethnomathematics, including her own work, not just as a president of the ISGM, but also as part of the work. All right? And there's Gloria Gilmer in her earlier years. When I met her, she was past that age. She was a bit older, but that's Gloria Gilmer in her early years. Arthur Powell is at Rutgers University in New Jersey. And among the things that he has done are the book that he edited with Madeleine Frankenstein on ethnomathematics, challenging Eurocentrism in math education. That's the book that Arthur Powell and Madeleine Frankenstein edited and put a chapter in. and that's other power. He has been, in my view, he has also made a major contribution. He has written extensively in the area, on the area, and he's also helped to develop and ask critical questions that should be asking to say, when you work in this area, what does it mean? And so in that book that I put up, you'll find a couple of interesting chapters that they put together as editors from other authors, which were exploring a number of aspects and topics and concepts that relate to ethnomathematics. And so Arthur Powell also done quite a bit of work in ethnomathematics. He does not do as much work now of late, because he currently directs the research group on communication technology and mass learning that is engaged in investigative and instructional process called EMATH. That's what he's quite active on currently. But I always appreciate the amount of time and dedication he has paid to mathematics to help advance it to the stages where it is. All right, let's move past Arthur Powell and go to Claudia Zaslavsky. I've got to say, we must check how I'm doing on time, and I'm speaking fairly fast.
You got about 25, 30 minutes.
Okay.
30 minutes.
Now, Claudia Zaslavsky, I've got a signed copy from Claudia, this book. And when I met her, it must have been either at the 1997 NCTM or 1999 NCTM, because I was at both. And she gave me a signed copy. And the challenge to me was, she took a keen interest and she has taught mathematics in Kenya, one of the African countries. And this is where part of her interest comes in. And so when she met me and she gave me this copy, she said to me, I wish that you Africans who are steeped in these traditions can help to take this work further. Those of us like me, that's Claudia talking to me, those of us like me who have come to appreciate and understand and analyze and learn, we have taken as far as we can in our understanding. But it goes deeper if you go yourself, to go deeper and do work and expand and clarify some of the things that you may have misunderstood at the time when we did them. And so I've always, and so Claudia challenged me, and perhaps even if I could have wanted to quickly leave mathematics, even if I could have wanted to leave mathematics, every time I think of Claudia's statement, I think, I will not do justice to the work that she has challenged me to take up and do something about it. And so she wrote Africa Counts, Number and Patterns in African Cultures. She has done a lot of work. It is a beautiful book. Published, I think, the third edition in 1999. She passed away, I think, around 2006 or so. But it is one of the seminal texts in books that are available that indicates the extent of work that can be done in ethnomathematics. So I'm giving here a couple of people from various parts of the US who have done work and extensive work in ethnomathematics. Some of whom I've learned from, I've engaged with, we have discussed issues, we've expanded, and so it is important. I just thought, I don't think we'd like to come to San Diego and not talk about them. I would have talked about many other people, but I thought it's important that in addition to whoever to talk about, I also indicate what kind of work has been done here that contributes to ethnomathematics, that what kind of work that we build on, that we draw from, that has continued to guide our work. And one of them is Claudia Zaslavsky's work. All right. And especially if you look at the statement that she says, in the third edition of the book, Claudia Zaslavsky writes the following. The first edition of Africa Counts was dedicated to those Africans who are now engaged in the formidable task of reclaiming their heritage. In recent years, Africans in ever greater numbers, as well as their colleagues in other parts of the world, have indeed been engaged in the formidable task about this kind of work that she's talking about here. But much still remains to be done, and this is what she challenges me on, says, go in and do some more work and reveal and share with us, share with the community, share with mathematics teachers and educators on what kind of richness exists. And I still take that into account when I do a bit of work, although I also venture into many other things, but I still do a bit of work in this area. All right, let me talk a little bit about some developments in ethnomathematics in South Africa. I spoke earlier about Paul Laridon at the top. When he set up that project, he had funding given by the NRF, and we did a bit of work, and ultimately was submitted as part of the reporting that was done, but it revealed a number of interesting things. For instance, one of the things that was reported on in that project was how, as a country that had just obtained its independence in 1994 and designed a new flag, what did the design of the new flag mean in the context of South Africans? That the analysis, the mathematics in the formation of the flag, the colors, the measurements and so on are all part of the analysis that was done in the project. Of course, people have said we could have done differently, but it was one of the earlier activities that were undertaken. So when you go into this class and you talk to the learners about it and they lift up their South African flag and pick it up, you as a maths teacher, you don't only look at it as a flag of the country, but also look at it from the mathematics. What does it teach them? What can they do to analyze, to learn, and to do something about, not just as something to hold special to because of being a South African, but also to say, what does it teach you in your work? And so that was done in that work. And so I've indicated a number of people have done work in that area as well. Later on then, Paul invited me and another student of his, Paul David Mohari, and we wrote a chapter on ethnomathematics studies and development in South Africa. And so in this book, Let's Education in South Africa, there is a chapter that Paul Andon, myself, and another maths educator wrote that was just sharing on what kind of work, what do we find in South Africa that can be taken further in terms of research. All right, now, in 2019, I completed an examination of a master's dissertation at one of the universities in South Africa, and I was asked to serve as examiner. And this student, the title of her work is The Role of Ethnomathematics in the Cultural Life of Amandebele Women at a Cosme Village in Mpumalanga Province. And I'm going to go to the provinces later. Now, in this work, this student on the left-hand side analyzes the work of Dr. Esther Mahlangu on the right. Now, Esther Mahlangu for us in South Africa is someone who has not been to school, but the kind of mural decorations that she does are rich in geometry and shapes. And so when we go to the Mpumalanga province and we talk about geometry, and geometry is one of the areas or topics or sections in mathematics that is performed poorly, especially at grade 12, which is the exit grade, one of the grades where people want to end. And so we have been questioned to say, if there are a number of, if people like her can do the kind of geometric shapes that they do, why is it impossible for us to draw and build on that and learn? And so what this student did in this work was to analyze her work, but from a best perspective. Now you can look at her work from a number of things. Her work has been recognized internationally. In fact, the University of Johannesburg gave her an honorary doctorate to acknowledge the work she has done. But in this work that I examined for a master's, she goes deeper to analyze in this particular cultural village, what kind of work do they do? Which math concepts do they teach or can be learned from that setting, and how can it be used to help the learners understand mathematics? Now here I give a couple of examples, and I won't waste time on that. These are just examples of some of the work that is done in South Africa on ethnomathematics. Maybe I should just talk to the village number 4. Now, at village number 4, Mogege Pageng, who is the Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Town, she has done most of her work in mathematics and language, together with Jill Adler. In fact, Mogege Pageng was a PhD student of Jill Adler. Jill Adler supervised her. So those of you know Jill Adler. So now she was elected to the president by Ada Powell. I spoke about Ada Powell earlier. At the third ICME, at the third International Conference on Maths, Education and Society in Denmark. So she was asked to react to the speaker that Ada Powell had given. And so I'll just give you an example of the work. And the last one is an article that we wrote with a colleague of mine, former colleague of mine at the University of South Africa, on incorporating the indigenous game of Morabaraba in the name of mathematics, which we published in the South African Journal in 2009. Perhaps I must also indicate at this point that the part done a bit of work more in the area more than any other is on indigenous games. That's the area that I've done quite a bit of work in, that I think I took a lot more interest in. And perhaps it is informed more by my own experiences when I was growing up as a young man, on things that I grew up playing, that I later on came to analyze and found how the amount of and depth of mathematics that they had in them that I never thought they did. And so that article says a bit about that. Some more work, and I will not waste time on that. These slides will be available for those who will need to refer to them. Now here I just look at a few other people. I've already spoken to Marcia Asher as a mathematics perspective. Bill Barton served as the ITME my president at some stage. He did his PhD on mathematics. It says mathematics according to the cultural diversity. That's his PhD work at the University of Auckland. I've spoken about Alan Bishop earlier, and Marcelo Borba, the Brazilian, who has done work. He's not doing work currently in the area, but he did work and wrote about it in that article. Marcos Cherinda, Tabula, Gersak Nishnik. Now it's interesting that a number of prominent Brazilian mathematics educators have done working with mathematics. One of them is Gersak Nishnik. She has learned an mathematical approach in mathematical education, a matter of political power. And when you read that article, you understand why, for them, it is issues related to power and politics, how it informs. In other words, for them, maybe I will not necessarily do that kind of work or study in the South African context or even relevant. But for the Brazilian community, for them, Brazil, it is important because it indicates how there are such disparities and what are the implications mathematically. And that's how that kind of work comes in. Maybe a few others. Okay, now, Joanna Masingila, I've not checked, but the last time I checked, she was at Syracuse University. This is what she did way back in 1997, using ethnomathematics as a classroom tool in the NCTM, yearbook. That's what she did way back in. So, and at the time, because I was at the beginning of my PhD, I actually visited her at Syracuse University and engaged with her on the kind of work I was doing and its importance. And I remember sitting in one of the classrooms when I went to one of the local schools in Syracuse, and we sat there and I was observing the kind of work. And so that's work that she has done. I don't think she has done any work recently, though, as far as I'm aware, because I don't think she has done much anything beyond that. I've not even checked on her. Okay, now, a few more. I've spoken about Arthur Powell and Martin Frankenstein already. So I'm just giving ideas on what others have done. All right. Now, I spoke about the International Studies Group on Ethnomathematics that Gloria Gilmer and Ambrosio started in 1985. And since then, these are the ethnomaths conferences every 4 years, just like ITME, that have taken place. As far as I'm aware, there are 6 of them. And I've been to 5 of them. The only one I've missed is in Colloquium. So the 4th one was held at Towson University in Maryland in 2010. And the reason why I don't forget that conference is because when it was the year we hosted the World Cup, football World Cup. And so I came to the US and the conference, and I lost my cell phone with all the pictures of the World Cup I just taken. Because when I got out of the taxi, I left the cell phone on the seat of the taxi and got into the hotel. When I searched for the cell phone, the taxi was gone. And I asked them to so all my beautiful pictures of being at the stadium, the first time we did the World Cup, were all gone. That's why I don't forget it. But I attended the ethnomaths conference at Towson, hosted by, he's now retired. I've got his name now, but I don't remember. But he was a professor of education at Towson University, and he has also been quite active in, I forgot his name. But I've been to all of them. Every one of them, because I took an interest. Let me share why this is important. When you decide to take an active interest in an area, you also want to learn how others do their work and how it influences yours. And it is not because I was out enjoying myself. The idea was to expand my own knowledge, to share ideas, to learn from others, but also share a little bit of what I thought could be done. And so all of this have actually helped me to shape me, to strengthen, to give me ideas, to redirect some of them that I was doing in the way that I did. But these are some of them that I've done. But as I indicated earlier, I don't know, I missed the last one. I was searching to just get away from mathematics, but and there's a new funding at the time. But otherwise, this has been very informative. The one in Auckland, the third one was hosted by Bill Barton in New Zealand. I spoke about Bill Barton. Yeah. The second one in Brazil, Ouro Preto, was hosted by Ubi D'Ambrosio as the second one, and so on. Okay, now, ethnomathematics and ICNI congresses. The aim at the 13th ICNI Congress in Hamburg, Germany, ethnomathematics fell under TSG 35, 20% group 35. And this is what they say about what it is that for those who are interested to do it in that area. But what is of interest, even more for me, are the research questions guiding ethnomathematical research at TSG 35. And these are some of the things that I think are of interest. For instance, what is the mathematical thinking developed by people in non-traditional and traditional academic Western contexts? How can this education use information regarding this mathematical thinking that is developed outside schools to improve our understanding of the maths in schools? And I find it's one of the areas that for me is very interesting. How do we take what happens outside the school, where children are located and based, for us to understand, to inform what they do in classrooms? And I think one of the reasons why there's such a poor performance, especially in our country and many other places, is because of that. There is a disjunction between what happens outside the school with what happens inside the classroom. And as a result, they are able, some of them become very good and perform well in mathematics. But we have not found examples or created sufficient connections with what they do outside of school to have an impact to do. And for as long as we don't do that right, we will continue to lose many of them who would have benefited from creating what they know or they come across or they see on a regular basis, not necessarily daily basis, but regular basis with what they do in classrooms, until we're able to create sufficient connection. And for you and me, we are the ones who have studied mathematics who are able to create the connections. One of the questions that have been asked on mathematics is to say, when you find some women doing beads, and I've got a few slides that are coming, and I'm already talk about it now. When you find old women like Dr. Matlangwa spoke about earlier, working with beads, are they doing mathematics? Or are they just doing artifacts? Some critics of mathematics have queried us putting our mathematics cap on to analyze and call it mathematics. It's one of the critics that has been put. And perhaps they are justified, maybe not. But the question is, when I sit there and go out and find two women who are doing bidding, and I have done mathematics, but I've got a bit of knowledge of mathematics, and look at it, what does it mean to me? If I took a group of students in grade 9 and go and sit and watch the two ladies bid, what do they learn? What is it that I can draw from that activity, which may not be called mathematics by the two women, to impact on what I do in classroom? And this is why, for me, that becomes important. Some more questions? What have I done?
No.
Oh boy. Now, this can't be good. Definitely not. Okay, let's quickly move on. My apologies, it looks like Charles, if we're home, we have said we have bewitched this little thing here. Of course, we don't believe in that. All right. These are the questions I was still addressing.
Yeah.
How can a wider socio-cultural view of mathematics expand the possibility for peace? And peace in some countries, it's a matter of life and death. how to use our auxiliary mathematics to address those issues. Prosperity and initial discrimination. I spoke about the context of Brazil, where the issue of landlessness is critical for them. So they would go deeper into that. It may not be the same for South Africa, although we've got land issues also. What has been done in terms of research on the law of mathematical education? So these are the questions that guided TSG 35 or those who do work at the ICME in Hamburg. And I'm sure you, if going to others, will find the same as well. And out of that work came the ethnomaths and its diverse approaches for men's education. It is, the research about it's Larry Shelley, Lawrence Shelley, who was at Towson University. He's the one who hosted the conference It was one of the 4 editors of Larry Shelley. And I think he's retired now, but he hosted a lovely conference in 2010, except that I lost my cell phone. But this is what came out of the Hamburg conference. All right, it's available, you can be able to access it. There's a chapter I wrote in there that addresses issues of language and mathematics. I'm currently supervising 3 students, 1 PhD and 2 masters. The first one the topic of her study is an exploration of ethnomathematical approaches in the teaching and learning of grade 6 geometry. That's my student's work. As we speak, she's at the data collection stage, and she's based in the Mpumalanga province. The second one, Ms. Galloway, the use of indigenous games. As I said, most of the work I've done is on indigenous games. The use of indigenous games in the teaching of geometric patterns in maths in the intermediate phase. Now, in South Africa, there are 4 phases. This is the foundation phase, grades 1 to 3, and grade I also included that. Then grades 4 to 6, which is the intermediate phase, which is where she's focusing her work. Then we've got 7 to 9, which is the senior phase, and grades 10 to 12, which is the last grade, which is the further education and training phase. So if you train teachers like we do, you will train them for any of the 4 phases. And I'm sure the same will apply here as well. So we focus on that. But this student is doing well, that focusing because he's teaching at the intermediate phase. And it's interesting that all of them are getting to the kind of geometry. The third one, Marema, an expression of grade 11 teachers' perspectives. Now the views of teachers, not of learners this time, of the teachers regarding teaching the geometry. In other words, how do they find, how do they find anything interesting? How do they think that this can find use or not? Have they ever tried? If not, why not? That's some of the interesting questions. So these are the 3 students that I'm currently supervising who are doing their work in this area. And I'm hoping that it's just been some good work up to now, except that the students will get slow. You know, some students can get slow in their work and they want to put them, I'm sure you've got experiences, you want to push them, and then they keep on giving you all that never happened. Excuses. But I'm enjoying the work that they do because it also enriches my own understanding of these things. Because remember, all of us are learning these processes, and some students come some beautiful work that you know, some ego never thought of, and this is how we learn out of this work. All right. Now, in addition to indigenous games, I've also done work at what is called cultural villages. Earlier on, I referred to that student whose work I examined. That masters who interviewed, who went to Dr. Isamatlabo. Now I'm giving examples of what we call cultural villages in South Africa. So in every province, you'll find a cultural village. Just to give an example, in Gauteng province, where I come from, where my home is, you find there's a cultural village. And we can look at all of them, various provinces. There are 9 provinces in South Africa. All right. This is not a province.
Yeah.
That's another country inside South Africa. There's been arguments that we must make it our 10th province, but that's too political, we're not all approved. And there I spoke about Paulo's jet earlier from Mozambique. There's Mozambique, where Paulo's jet comes from. When the Brazilians said to us, we've got Ubida Brusio, we then say to them, we've got Paulo's jet next door. That was a nice one. But these are the provinces of South Africa, all right? And my place where I currently work is over here, Bloemfontein, South Africa. That's where I am, one of the provinces. but my home is in the capital city, Pretoria. Just give you an idea of how South Africa looks like. It's made up of 9 provinces. And the slide that I showed two slides previously was showing where those cultural villages are. And I'm saying this because when I give talk to my teachers and they say, can you give us examples of how we can find ethnometrical examples that we can use? I then say, there is a cultural village in your province. Have you just, even as a start, visit it? Not even take your students first, just visit it and go and see what you can find there. I found these cultural villages to be rich mathematically. And a lot of it. So every time teachers say, I don't have an example, say, which province do you come from? Or KwaZulu-Natal. In KwaZulu, there are 3 cultural villages, 1, 2, 3. Have you visited any one of them? Not as a tourist, but as a mathematics teacher. Not as a tourist. Going there, spending a day, not running around seeing people dancing, which is good and enjoyable. But when they dance, have you analyzed their movements in dancing? And so I always argue to say there are many examples in our context. I don't know in the context or in the context here, but I'm sure there are similar examples that we can draw from. But in our case, you don't need to go. So you don't have to go to another province to a language that, because these provinces are good according to the languages that people speak. For instance, I speak Setswana. My name is Mogege Mosimege. I speak Setswana, that's my home language. And I come from the Northwest Province. This is where I come from. And just across here and here, there's Botswana, another country, speaks Setswana. So I speak Setswana. All right. But if I want to go and do an interview of women in the Eastern Cape, that's where Mandela comes from. They speak Setswana. Now, that's not my home language. But it doesn't mean, and in one of the articles I wrote, I think it's a 2012 article that I wrote, I argued to say, because there was this argument to say, I'm not limiting, we don't have access to the language. That's not limit your ability to do research. But that's why we take people who are good at speaking the language to go with you, to work with you. All right. And so I was arguing in an article that even though you have the limited ability in the language, it's possible to access the data and work with others to enrich the experience. Okay, let's move on. I'm absolutely well on time. Now, in this example here, and I will not go through all the parts, I was interviewing these 2 ladies at the Cultural Village. They speak Ndebele, I speak Setswana. So some of the time, and I argue somewhere in my writing that actually if it's always best to find a way to access what others can say. Because I could base out on some of the things because I don't speak their language, even though I'm South African. And so when they go deeper into the language, I would even go back to say, what do you mean? And so on. But actually, ideally, I should have got someone who speaks Ndebele to assist me so that I don't miss out on some of the, in language, that issues that you have to follow up that you cannot easily pick up. But this excerpt here, all of these are my interviews with them. They can see, and I've put the English version in brackets. All right. And here we're talking about beads. And I'm saying, one time I asked them, how do you know that here I'm making a 90-degree angle? That, in other words, and I don't ask them, I say, do you make a 90-degree angle? I can see 90 degrees. I say, how do you make a 10? Such that it moves and changes shape. And they will tell you that, now you've got to put it in this shape. They don't talk about angles, but you can hear that they talk about angles. And so you can put me into that. And I found it very rich. And I've put it in as one example of what I did, of what I found when I went to talk to 2 ladies whose work at the cultural village is beadwork. And so when you go and buy an artifact that's got beads, for me and you as message educators, it's not just about the fact that you've got an artifact, but actually what has gone into making an artifact that makes sense. And many of our learners have got this, they don't have to be, they've got many of these in their homes. You can just go back to, you can just tell your learners, go home, look for something that is made in beads. Look at it and or talk to your mom about it, or talk to your dad about it, or bring it to school, let's come talk about it in class.
So there are such many examples. That's why when just say, can you give us references? I say, but you've got many examples. You don't have to go anywhere very far.
Kind of close the time, just so you know.
Okay.
People might be stepping out of the Zoom meeting.
Okay, how
Just a couple more minutes.
okay, let me quickly finish up. That's the program we'll talk about this that we've done for 20 years or more. Okay, so okay now, but this one here, I've just given examples of the fact that even at a very minimal level, you don't have to go deeper with deeper mathematical analysis. If just at the simple level, you find you can, for the foundation phase, you can show counting, repetitive cycles, similarity, measurement. I'll just give you a few examples that you find just from one activity that you can be able to teach the rest about and so on. And just a few math concepts that you talk about. Okay, let me, in some beadwork and the sequential village that I'm talking about. Here's a mural decoration, similar to the one that Dr. Matabu did earlier. And I'm saying, when you go there, how do they do this? How do they make this kind of shapes? They don't even know what a rhombus is. They don't even know how to spell it, possibly. But then they do the kind of things that you can't even describe in terms of geometric shapes. Maybe the technology of that you have used in geometry that is not adequate to describe what our people can do. This one is at the structural village, and they do glass artifacts. They will have to explain to you how do they make this bottom bigger and that part smaller. Or how do they, when do they, what is that they do to change shape and direction? And they will tell you. Or how much glass do they put to do what? Counting, shape, and all kinds of things. And I'm going to close on this. Just give some illustration. This is the one that I said I've done quite a bit of working. Oh boy.
Oh no.
No, it didn't. Yeah.
Oh no. Uh-oh. Oh gosh. Uh-oh.
Oh,
I apologize.
this reminds me of my unpleasant experiences. When something can go wrong, it really goes wrong. So here it is, I trying to finish, and then this happens. Because I thought I'm almost at the end, Bill. Okay. Now I was just talking about a little bit about this. Now, his string figure games, we all know them. In my language, we call them Maleba. And this is what I learned when I was a small boy. I didn't know there was something written about string figure games, but I played with my father. And so when I came across the teacher, I thought, what is that they say that is different from what I know? And so you the richness. Of course, this is what I did with some of the learners in class. String gauge too. And of course, we can analyze this deeply to all kinds of mathematical topics. The beauty about this is that the learners know the games. So you don't have to ask them, just give them the strings and they play them. And then you draw from what they do to teach them the concepts. Okay, so these are some of the minimal things that come from string games. Some of the when this entire string at a specific way, give you some of the equations that are required. Of course, this is one that I've touched on, and you can find. This is when I was doing some classroom class. This is the teacher. These were the learners, and we were playing one game. And of course, that work is part of that in that article, South African Level of Education. You could put the chess game of Rubber mathematics, find it. Now, this one, I've got to close on this one. I worked at the University of Limpopo. The University of the Free State, that's the first university where I'm working in South Africa. In my first university teaching position, I worked in the University of Limpopo before I moved to the US for my studies. When I got to this place, I was surprised to find that at lunch, professors leave their offices and go and play this thing. And so I didn't know this game because it is not played in part of the province, in part of the country where I come from. I didn't know it until I moved to the north of the country and came across this. And I found this complicated stuff. When we see them playing it, you completely get lost. Now, this man was the local champion. He had not been to school. He beat professors from my faculty and the game. And then it's so complicated. What I learned when I studied this was that even people like him, who have not been to school, are able to do complicated mathematical calculations. Complicated and quick, because that's what comes in this game. And you can see how big the board is, because the boards that we're used to are the small ones. But you have seen the one. Now, this one here has been built out in the community. It's in the community out there. People play. So I'm just saying there's so much richness that we have hardly touched in our work to help our learners understand mathematics, to help us demystify some of the concepts. Of course, some of the things are not necessarily easy to do or relate to these, but to the extent that we can, we should be able to do that. And I close by just showing a few more games of another game. Just for a second. The usual way it is done, you dig a hole in the ground and that's how you play, but you can just try to spin around and play. That's it.
Well, there is time for questions and answers if folks want to stick around. Also, I know some people might have 4 o'clock appointments they need to leave for. So if you need to leave, don't feel guilty, but thank you so much for this presentation. Are there questions or comments or wonderments?
So I'll preface this by saying I'm a biologist. I found this fascinating. And it sounds like in ethnomathematics, it's really focused on this idea that mathematics is kind of part of everyone's life from a very young age. It's innate mathematical reasoning. In biology, it's the same way. And what emerges from that in biology is some normative reasoning that's accurate and a lot of misconceptions about the natural world that's inaccurate, that often people take with them through the rest of their lives. Even when they go to school, they keep those ideas that they reasoned when they were very young about the natural world. And I'm curious, in mathematics, in mathematical reasoning, do you see anything akin to that, akin to misconceptions about how math works? Because it's almost, I mean, honestly, the way you're describing math, it's almost like it's a living thing. It's like part of nature in a lot of ways, the way you're describing it. I'm just curious if there's something akin to the misconceptions that people experience in biology.
Perhaps not in the context of misconceptions or in the understanding of misconceptions per se, but in how the learners are not able to build conceptually on their understanding from what they know. So maybe not necessarily as misconceptions as you would find in biology or in physics, where they hold, which goes with beliefs. I think that there are a lot of that in your discipline, where such that it's hard to move them. In fact, there's an article we did in 2004 on one of my interest areas is in general systems, and it addresses what we're just talking about, where people have got this thing that lightning, you don't go to that place because they will hit you with lightning, those kind of things. And that's why, so maybe it's not to the extent but the difficulty that children hold on to this concept in the way they've either understood it or have been taught, but not necessarily built on some belief, like you have in biology or in physics or in chemistry and so on. So it is not necessarily to the same extent of misconceptions, but the fact that they are not really able to develop conceptually in terms of understanding. I suppose maybe rather than say misconceptions, could say alternate conceptions.
Hello. First, thank you so much for coming all the way here. This was really informative to me. I'm really not familiar with ethnomathematics at all, so I really wanted to come, and I really appreciate you putting this on for us. I was curious, earlier you had mentioned a researcher who was studying ethnomathematics, but really kind of gracefully integrating technology.
Ron English.
Thank you. Yes. And so I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that, because I'm trying to imagine how you take these two things that feel like they're on kind of opposite sides of the spectrum.
What I like about Ron English's work is that what ladies would do in basketry or in bidding, he goes and models that and produces from the technology perspective, only the same thing. So he indicates that actually, which is a little bit of building on what Paulo Zget has done in some of his work, where Paulo Zget went on to indicate that from this you move into that, and then ultimately move into this technology. So what Ron English does is that he models that and indicates that if we're to extend this further and even produce some related formulae related to that, that can help you to understand that actually from this simple weaving process, we're able to introduce technology and expand it. And maybe that's the part, there is an important part that at times there's a misunderstanding, maybe misconception. There's a misunderstanding that ethnomathematics and ethnoscience, ethnobotany, whatever it is meant to take us back to the past and refuse us to move to the future. And I always argue, and in fact, the latest colleagues in Brazil they've gone into ethnomodeling. What their names are, they're not so edited. Let me just quickly go back, if I can find quickly, that book I showed you, of the ICME Congress, if I can find one of the names, I think one of them. Yes, Milton Russell, the guy at the top. He has worked together with another one. The two of them have actually written on ethnomodeling to indicate how you can look into modeling and bring it into ethnomathematics. Now, so what Ron English, what Ron English does is that he looks into any simple process, and because it comes from the technology background, and looks and says, how can this be expanded further? And so in that sense, the building block is a concept that may be found out somewhere, but done by somebody, and he extends it to indicate what other variations can be created based on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it says that I don't speak about Ron English, but it's done a beautiful work. And one of the books was on fractals.
Oh,
Fractals, yes. Yes,
okay.
Fractals, yeah.
Love fractals.
Yeah.
Are there any questions on Zoom?
Didn't see any questions on the Zoom, no.
There's a lot of time to explain.
Yeah, thank you.
So if I remember correctly, I think you said you wrote a book chapter on language and ethnomathematics. Is that right?
Yes, in this very,
In that one, right?
yes. And what I'm challenging there is, I'll speak about the fact that language is quite critical. And that's why and I relate to my own experiences here, that when I interview the ladies who speak Isindebele, I speak Setswana. Because of my language limitation, I would not at times dig deeper into their own understanding. But actually, it does not have to be a burden, because I just get a native speaker of the language to assist me to access, because if you don't go deeper in that language, you're going to miss some of the richness of the things that they do, and not express them and share them with us. And I'm talking about language and its implications when you conduct ethnomathematical studies. It is in this chapter. It's that chapter is in this book, rather. So and now my area in maths education is not maths and language. That's for Jill Adler and Mama Hitchpake. That's what they do. But that chapter, or that part of my work in ethnomathematics, has linked me a little bit to the kind of work that Jill Adler and people who do math and language and code switching in classrooms, they've seen about that. That's part of what Judith Mosimege also does on code switching and how that in the classroom. You are able to draw on that. And so yes, take me through it, but I am not expecting Western language. That's for Judith Mosimege, that's for Jill Adler, that's for Mogege and so on. But there's richness that you can just draw upon to indicate how it impacts on work. So language is important.
Can you give like maybe one example of how you're linking ethnomathematics and language? Can you give like a specific example of how you draw on that work?
The example I gave earlier, where I said, okay, let me go back. Is it after this or before this? I'm not
I
sure.
think forward.
Let me just check quickly. No, it's after. Okay, now. And I'm just indicating a little bit here what I was asking them. I hope I'll find you quickly. In this part, I say, and I'm using my own. Now, this one is to add those. Here I say, let's say about Joang or Remona, keep video holo or keep it. So I'm asking them. And then he says, how do you know that here you put a large bit and here you put a small bit? Because the people tell me, no, here you put a large bit, here you put a small bit. So I was asking them, so now I'm using my own language. Now, as much as they could understand what I'm saying, because I don't speak in, that's not is in the head, that's the sort of, that part there. If they had not understood what I said in Sesotho, I would have missed out on the richness of the explanation on the use of the different sides of things. So I'm saying that when you conduct ethnomathematical studies, language is important. It allows you to have access to what others do, but it does not exclude you from doing research if you're not a native speaker of that language. I'm saying, because sometimes people say, no, but you cannot conduct studies in institute because you're not a native speaker. No, there are people who do that. Ours is true, and that's why collaboration comes in. Because I cannot do that with someone who understands that and we are together and do the work and still do that. So and I was arguing and I was addressing the issue where people say ethnomathematical work is problematic because it is language dependent. And I said, but actually you can bypass that, you can be able to deal with that. Don't want to do it all on your own because it will not work. That's why they are all, I mean, that's why there are 5 of us in class, we go and sit around it. We can sit this course, I speak this to you, please speak this one, and we put together and do something good.
Thank you.
I think on that note, we should probably wrap up formally for today to say thank you again.